Hello and welcome. So today we're going to talk about a really powerful tool for building AI agents. It's called LangGraph. But, instead of jumping into a bunch of complex diagrams and code right away, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to understand it through a story that unfolds in a beautiful world that looks and feels like a living, breathing oil painting.
Yeah, the whole idea here is to use this story to make everything just click. So by the end of this, you should have a really intuitive feeling for what LangGraph is all about, how it works, and why it's such a big leap forward from those simple, one-way AI chains.
Is really a story that's meant to take something kind of abstract and make it feel real, something you can almost touch. So come on, let's step into this painted world of Aurelia and see what we can learn about building smarter, more flexible AI.
Okay, so our story kicks off in this incredible valley where, honestly, everything looks like it's part of one huge living canvas. And we meet a young artist who's stuck, facing a problem that, well, a single straight path just can't solve. So, deep in the quiet valley of Aurelia, the landscape itself was just a masterpiece. It was a place where color and light seemed to dance together in what felt like perfect harmony. I mean, just picture this. The mountains, they just glowed with these soft blues. The trees shimmered with the deepest greens you've ever seen. And the rivers, they moved like these gentle, flowing strokes of silver paint. And above it all, the sky was this constant, beautiful swirl of warm pinks and golds.
And right there, in a small, earthy cottage, lived our hero, a thoughtful young artist named Eamon. Now, Eamon loved bringing his ideas to life, but man, he kept hitting the same frustrating wall over and over again.
You see, Eamon realized that whenever he worked on something really complex, his whole process was just too rigid, too stiff. He'd start down one path, right? And if it turned out to be the wrong one, he'd have to scrap everything and start all over from scratch. He was completely trapped in this linear way of thinking.
So one night, he's just staring at this really complicated, unfinished painting. And he whispers to himself, I wish I could see all the paths at once, not just this one. He desperately needed a way to explore, to backtrack, to change his plan without losing all his hard work. And right then, something absolutely incredible happened.
All of a sudden, this soft breeze just fills the room. The paints on his shelves, they start to swirl. And then, right from the center of his canvas, this glowing figure starts to emerge. It was his spirit, made entirely of colors and lines, and it represented a completely new way of thinking. The spirit's voice was deep and gentle. I am LangGraph, he said. Eamon, just completely stunned, asked, What do you do? And LangGraph, he just extends this shimmering hand and says, I don't force you down one single straight line. Instead, I help you build a map of all your steps. We can visit them in any order we want, and we can even loop back when we need to.
You can just imagine, Eamon's eyes went wide. He said, So you're not just one road? Exactly, LangGraph explained. A single road, that's like a simple script. It only goes forward. But a graph is like a painting of all the possible roads. It lets you decide which path to take next based on what you've just learned. It can even have cycles, letting you try again and again until you get it right.
And this new way of thinking? Well, it couldn't have arrived at a better time, because Aurelia was facing this huge crisis, a crisis that needed a flexible, multi-step solution.
Here's the problem. The colors of dawn, these magical pigments that literally gave the valley its life, they were fading away. Every single sunrise was duller than the one before. And this wasn't a simple fix, The solution would take research, discovery, and using just the right tools. It was the perfect job for an agent. Eamon just felt this immense weight on his shoulders. I don't even know where to begin, he whispered. But LangGraph just lifted his hand, and this glowing network appeared right there in the air. This, he said, is our plan. Each little point of light is a specific task, a tool we can use. And the lines? Those are the paths we can take between them.
So LangGraph started to guide Eamon through it. Their first step, using a tool to search the mountains, well, it was a dead end. But here's where the magic happens. They didn't have to start over from scratch. Nope. The graph let them just loop right back. So they chose a new tool, one for searching the forest, and boom, they found some really important clues. This new information totally updated their plan, which then led them to the river to analyze those clues, and that finally pointed them to the true path.
So, by following this path that they figured out as they went, they finally reached the Cave of Infinite Hues, and inside they found it, the real source of the problem. The heart pigment, the source of all color in the valley, was cracked. This was the answer they were looking for, and they didn't find it by luck. They found it through this intelligent looping process.
LangGraph nodded, and he shared something really profound. He said, "A graph reveals the path that matters by showing you the ones that don't." And that right there is the very heart of how these AI agents work. By allowing for trial and error, for these cycles, LangGraph made it possible for their plan to correct itself, to get smarter, until it finally led them to the right solution. And with a few gentle strokes of his brush, Eamon healed the crack, and the heart pigment began to glow again.
With the source of the problem fixed, all Eamon and LangGraph could do was wait for the morning to see if their dynamic, multi-step journey had actually worked.
And the next morning, wow, Aurelia awoke to the most brilliant, the most beautiful sunrise it had ever seen. Ribbons of pure gold and waves of deep violet just filled the sky. The colors of dawn were back, and they were more vibrant than anyone could remember.
Eamon, just totally overwhelmed with emotion, he thanked the spirit. LangGraph placed this warm hand on his shoulder, and just before he faded back into the canvas, he left him with one last thought. When you can see many paths, you will always find your way.
Okay, let's bring it back now. So let's pull back from this beautiful story for a second and connect it directly to what LangGraph actually is. Because Eamon's journey, it wasn't just a quest, it was a perfect analogy for an AI agent at work.
Okay, so this is the really crucial part. You remember the different places Eamon visited? The mountain, the forest? Well, those are what we call nodes. Think of them as functions or tools your AI can use. The paths between them, those are the edges, and they basically direct the flow of the logic. Now, the clues he gathered along the way, that represents the state, which is kind of like the agent's memory that gets updated with every step. And most important of all, his ability to try something, have it fail, and then go back and try something else. That's a cycle. And it's this ability to loop, to try again, that makes LangGraph so incredibly powerful for building complex agents that can actually reason and correct themselves.
And that really brings us to the moral of the story, doesn't it? Really complex problems, they almost never have a simple, straight-line solution. LangGraph gives you the framework to build agents that can actually navigate that complexity, agents that can explore, experiment, update their own memory, and find their own way forward.
So, as we wrap this up, I'll just leave you with this one thought. You now have this mental picture, this story, for a tool that lets you map out these incredibly complex, intelligent processes. Life really is a canvas of many paths. So, which ones will you explore?